Why are modern men like this? The Bible has an answer. In Genesis, both Adam, representative of men, and Eve, representative of women, receive curses, consequences of living in a now fallen world. These curses strike at our deepest vulnerabilities and are perfectly tailored to each sex. Left unchecked, they bring ruin to individuals and collapse to entire societies. The proclamation of the male curse starts with God explaining why this is happening. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Adam went against a direct order from God and did so by neglecting his God given role as the head of the family, whose responsibility it was to stand up to Eve. Instead, he followed Eve's lead. Yes, the first sin of man was simping. Adam tried to defend himself by claiming it was Eve's fault, since she's the one who brought the forbidden fruit to him. But God did not accept such an excuse. Adam was granted authority over Eve as her husband. Thus, it was his responsibility to stop her. Not only did he neglect his duty, he then joined in by also eating. Our society has followed Adam's example. It's common to see online men blaming women for the modern state of politics. And they have valid points.
Oh, they do.
But who is it that allows and enforces those decisions? Since ultimately all politics is force, it's men. You can blame women all you want, and you might be right. And if so, God will hold you accountable for dereliction of duty.
Number one, he uses the example of a biblical story of Adam and takes a leap of faith to blame all men. So he takes a story of individual accountability of one guy and then puts it on mass account that everyone's responsible for this. So he uses the Bible. I'm assuming this guy's Christian, a religious guy, and he just has a lazy explanation that, well, it's men's fault because obviously force is controlled by men, so men are to blame if women are behaving this way. So since he likes biblical explanations, I'm going to also provide a biblical explanation with a story. Okay, so the story is that of Jesus Christ when he is praying, I believe, in the desert, right? The devil comes and tempts him. So he tells Jesus Christ, and again, I'm not a theist, so don't you can't quote me for this, but I'm telling you from how I remember the story. He offers him all these riches, but the problem, and I think what a lot of people miss in that story is that the devil is offering things to Jesus that he himself does not own to give. He doesn't own these things to give it to him. Now, what am I saying with the story of Jesus Christ and the devil? What I'm trying to tell you right now is that the government is the devil here in this analogy. The government tells women, don't worry about anything. The government provides a safety net and protection for women. The the same way that a man it's very difficult for a man to say no to sex if they just offer free sex to a man. It's very difficult for a woman to say no to free things or security if offered to them. So the concept of selling your soul is there. So here comes the devil, right? A politician, the government. Vote for me, and I thou shall give you free things. And what do women do? Well, women sell their soul. They give their vote to get those free things, which are taken by force. Because what is taxation but force? And the majority of taxes going to the government are provided by men. Women take more from the system, and men put more into the system. So you cannot blame men and ignore the system, which is the government. The government creates the incentives, provides the incentives, creates the rules, and then gives consequences for not following those rules. After women gained the vote, the government has grown. Debt has grown. We're what, $34 trillion into debt after women gained the vote. All the national liability has grown. All social services have grown with the vote of women because women are the weakest of the sex and the most susceptible to manipulation. And governments know this. Politicians know this. I mean, have you heard of uh, divorce and what happens to divorce and men? This guy's arguments is what most Christians argue, right? When you see these Christians, they want to give all the responsibility to men without any of the authority. What authority do men have? Now, he is right when he says that force is ultimately controlled by men. Men have a monopoly on force, which is true. It is true. Men do have a monopoly on force, but men as a whole don't have a monopoly on the government. It's a small group of men that have a monopoly on the government, and the government panders to women in order to gain their vote to keep political power. So what I'm not going to accept from basic logic here, and it's very basic in this video. I love your videos, bro, but here's the logic is very basic and it's lazy. Men, again, men are responsible. Men are at fault, and you completely ignore the system that we operate in. Like, why do you think men are not getting married? Because there's just so much legalized incentives for women to divorce. But you don't. I don't hear you bringing this up. I don't hear a lot of Christians bringing this up. Christian says, "Men, why aren't men getting married? Have you seen the law? I don't know. I mean, am I insane? Yeah, like, have you seen the laws? Government creates this artificial sexual marketplace for women. So the government, but this is what the government creates hiring quotas. Government says to private companies, you need to hire more women. You get tax breaks or some type of incentives from the government. Also, the government says to colleges, you need to get more women into colleges. So then, and we'll guarantee the loans. We'll come in and guarantee the loans because we'll provide those loans to women, artificially inflating the number of women in college, and then also artificially inflating the women in the workforce, creating jobs that are completely nonsense and provide nothing of value to the world. Just there's daycare centers for women not to have children. Think about it this way. Think about it this way logically. If say that the government says today that they're removing themselves from marriage completely, they have nothing. They're no longer going to have anything to do with the religious agreement of two private individuals. That they're not going to get involved anymore. What do you think is going to happen to marriage tomorrow if that's announced today? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen? Hmm? Do you think more people will get married? Do you think more people will get married now that women are not going to be incentivized to end marriage for financial reasons or financial gain? What do you think? Seriously, what do you think will happen to marriage tomorrow if that happens? If government no longer is going to get involved in marriage, I mean the answer is obvious. Imagine if the government stops providing these social safety nets for women. He talks about basic logic, talks about morality, but ignores power. Talks about morality, ignoring the power structure that exists. Why do you think morality was created? Well, what is the purpose of morality? Well, the purpose of morality is to deceive. A lot of people don't think it's for that, but the purpose of morality in language is to get what you want, to survive, right? Deceive. So the government creates moral rules, which are laws. God creates commandments, right? Moral rules in commandments, 10 commandments. So God says, thou shalt not kill. Government says you can't steal or you'll go to prison, you'll go to jail. Now the thing with the people, right? These authority figures that make morals, that make moral rules or moral laws, they always create an exception for themselves. So for example, God says, thou shalt not kill, yet he kills. Government says, thou shalt not steal. Government says you cannot steal. But if enough people vote, so this is the government. So I'm hungry, I'm going to steal. Can't do that. That's wrong. I go to jail. But if I say we're hungry and we vote to steal from him, then the government steals for us. So the government, as God, they create moral rules and then make themselves an exception to that rule. This is the purpose of morality. So in closing, don't hate the player, hate the game, bitch. You disgust me.